Hey, everybody. Nice to see you this morning. I hope you had your coffee. This was kind of a coffee talk I thought I'd do today. Um, and, this is my first live stream, so I'm working out the kinks on the system here. But I'm happy to get your feedback, see what you have to say. My wife asked me the other day, though, she's like, why are you going to go live stream? It's just a lot of work and effort. Why don't you just spend some time writing another book? And I said, well, that's a novel idea. So seriously, folks, I'm Alan Brocken. I'm author of the middle grade series Towers of Light. That was my book, Light of Mine. Armor of God is book 4 in the series. And I just finished writing book 5. So I'm an author. And I set up the call today really just to help you get perspective on, how do I really want to do that? Right. So it's been a long time ago for me, but I know many people, someone says you ought to write a book. Over the last few years, I've had a lot of people reach out to me professionally and ask that question, like, "Hey, I'm an expert in whatever, whether it was Active Directory or project management or anything in the professional sphere." They were asked, "Hey, I'd like to write a book," or maybe they had a cool fantasy idea in their mind or science fiction, but there were just kind of blockers to getting started, and they really didn't want to move forward. I respect that. My first adventure with writing happened a long time ago, and so I'm curious. If you're here watching this stream, did somebody who told you that? Who told you you ought to write a book? For me, it was my sixth grade teacher, Mrs. Reineberger. In sixth grade, she had this contest that was about like every minute you read, you got points, and you could take those points and you could turn the points into um, like stickers and puzzles and things that a sixth grader might like. But I was determined to really just blow that whole contest out. I was gonna have the best and most reading that year. And over the summer, I had picked up this book. This is Battlefield Earth by whoops upside down. Battlefield Earth by L. Ron Hubbard. And I was just really excited. I went to the library book sale, and they had this book that was huge, thick book, $25 cover sticker price, and I got it for $1, and I was really proud of myself. So I read it, and then it was so good, I just kept reading it. So I racked up about like 5,000 hours or 5,000 minutes of reading. And she's like, for the amount of reading you do, you really ought to write something. So I'm curious if you're here in the stream, did anybody ever tell you you ought to write something? Well, if that comes back around, I'm happy to talk a little bit about that. But hey, so you were interested enough in writing to show up today. Um, you know, uh, what got you interested? Like, why are you here? What made you want to show up? For me, it was my kids. When I got older, I had some kids, and I was having a tough time. Kind of relating in the sense I was working all the time far away from home. I was traveling so many hours a week, and I'd run out of words talking to my clients during the day. And I really needed a way to connect with my kids. So I was like, what am I going to do? Because by the end of the day, I'm just tired and they want to talk to me. It's that kind of sitting on the phone, not really having anything to say. I wanted to come up with something. So I usually was like awake in the morning, early in the morning, and so I had a little time to jot down ideas, and so I started kind of writing from there. Um, and so part of the thing was I was writing from what I knew, and I got a whole article on that that I posted at a friend of mine's. Website on writing what you know, and that's what I did. Like I've got in the background, you can kind of see some stuffed animals. Those are the kids stuffed animals. I kind of turned that into a story plus the kids, and that's how we get to the books I have today. But that's not the only, whatever, if you're a professional and you're great at project management, then write about that. You'd be surprised how many people want to learn from you what you know. um, and so, that being said, sometimes you just get a crazy idea. A few weeks back, I spent all day writing a book about mazes. Yeah, I got lost in it. So anyway, let's keep the show going here. So the other bit about this is, what's your blocker, right? Like you might have been interested in writing, but what got in your way? What's keeping you from moving forward? For me personally, I actually, after my sixth grade teacher told me to write a book, I did. I actually wrote a 100-page story. I was really proud of it. It was the Shock Troops Year of Conquest. It was exciting for a sixth grader. Entered it in a contest, and I just knew it was the best book ever. And then it really wasn't. It was horrible. But that wasn't what really slowed me down from doing more writing. It was really this idea that I'll call English class. Um, I just wasn't very good at English class. It was one of those classes that I couldn't excel at. I was much better at math, sciences, STEM type things. And so eventually I just kind of checked out. Like anything literary related, I just didn't get into. And it was really sad because I missed out on the opportunity to learn a lot of great stuff about writing. So what's your blocker? What's keeping you, from moving forward from a writing perspective? Something to think about, right? Is it that blocker something you can overcome? Because quite frankly, in my case, the writing and grammar stuff has been largely overcome by all the tools we have today. So from there though, let's say you get over the blocker and you're like, okay, I'm going to write something, and you sit down and you've got a good reason why you're writing and you're making this thing go. um are you writing to get it published, right? Like get it out there into the world for people to read in general, or is there just kind of a small audience? You've got a good story, you want to hand it off to a couple friends, and that's good. I think there's a big difference between writing and publishing. Like writing in and of itself can just be really enjoyable. Like you enjoy the process of putting things out there. You may have a couple of friends or fans that read it, and that's all that matters. On the other hand, publishing is a whole nother level. There's a bunch of stuff you've got to deal with. So if you're thinking about taking on this adventure of writing, how do you feel about feedback and criticism? Like, when you put something out there on paper, is it something that you can really accept the feedback from? I know for me, that was actually one of the early things I realized was that what I had written for my kids was a nice story for my kids. We had the context as a family about what was going on, and it didn't really matter that it had an ending to it, right? Like as I was writing, I was thinking more like comic books. I was a big comic book kid as a kid. I love comic books. And so I kind of thought that's what writing was about. You want to write a story to a certain point, and then you leave a cliffhanger. Um, so with that in mind, I just kind of threw it out there. Well, when I actually took it to someone who was a professional who had written things, to say my baby was ugly is an understatement. It was really bad. Like what I wrote, my first version of a book that I took the time to publish was really bad. And the criticism was hard. And I've gotten that criticism multiple times over there. So if you're really thinking about publishing, like you've got a book idea, you've gotten over your basic blockers, and you're ready to go write, just understand that it's really important to be okay with feedback, and like painful feedback, because that's a big chunk of writing. So the next question is, who are the writers in your life? Do you know other people that you can turn to for advice and perspective? I know for me, that was actually one of the big things that was lacking at the beginning. Was I was doing this all on my own without anybody around. Like, I mean, my kids gave me feedback, and it was a story about them, so that was fine. But when it came to publishing something and having something out there for the rest of the world to see, I didn't really have any writers in my life. Like, if I could go back and redo all of this adventure that I was on, I think the big thing I would do is I would go back and, like, if I could tell myself in say 2015, you're going to go do this writing thing, you should go get some friends. I would have joined the Realm Makers Consortium back then. So the Realm Makers Consortium is one of the things, groups I'm a part of as a writer. There's some others, the Christian Indie Publishing Association, some various things I'm a part of. But the Realm Makers Consortium is a great place for me because it gave me all kinds of people I didn't know. I also had some good friends that came up along the way. And next week I'm going to talk about who do you have in your party. But that's a real question. Like, are there other people around that can help you evaluate your work, see if it's good, that kind of thing? The last big thing, about, am I going to go do this thing, right? Do I have the support I need to get it going? Is like, do you have any raving fans? Do you have some people in your life that will keep encouraging you even when you get bad feedback? I think that's one of the things when I look at my journey through this is I've gotten so much bad feedback, but I've also had some great friends and raving fans, whether it was my kids or just friends along the way that have been really helpful. And so, in addition to getting advice from other people, you got to have some people that are going to pick you up when you get knocked down because you're going to get knocked down a lot when you're writing. And then the last, like, pretty serious part of this is really the financials of this. If you're going to go actually go into publishing, you're gonna take your book, you're gonna take it out to market. You've got really two options, right? You've got a traditional publishing route where you write up a synopsis and a query letters and things like that, and send those out to publishers, or you can go with a self-publishing route. I'm going to focus on the self-publishing route in this series just because that's the route I ended up on. I know more about it. But the fact of the matter is, um, you can get published. I mean, it takes a lot of effort. You got to have the right story, but it's also not guaranteed. Essentially, the data I've seen on traditional publishing is about 23% of proposals are accepted, but that's not by your top tier first choice. I mean, that's 23% all up. And that's of people's who actually kind of have things out there in the publishing world is kind of the thing. So figure 23% is kind of your best odds to get published, and it's probably lower than that. But the data in the industry is just not very clear. That's the clearest number I have. So, realize that you may have one, two, three, four projects that you put together that you put out to the world to say, hey, would you publish this before you find a publisher that's willing to do it? On the other hand, you can do what I did as an independent publisher and put out your own work. If you do that, you're looking at statistically less than 100 copies. That's the statistics. Less than 100 copies are sold from any independent published book of the whole lifetime of the book. Now, granted, independent publishing is relatively new, so there's that. But in reality, that less than 100 is friends and family. If you put out a book and you tell your friends and family about it, they're gonna go buy some books. You're gonna sell some. But getting the general populace that don't know your book, don't know you, getting them to buy in is a much bigger challenge. And so, the other thing is if you move beyond 100, at about 400 copies, you're in the top 80% of self-published authors. So again, if as you think about the financial implications of this and trying to build a book and sell it, don't expect that you're going to make a lot of money statistically. Now, eventually, the top 95% of self-published authors have sold 1,000 books or more. And that's not to say you can't do it, but really what you've got to do is keep writing. I think one of the big things I've learned over the years is that, the best thing to sell more books is to write more books. So, don't look at it out of the gate like you're going to go make a lot of money off of this. Look at it like it's an investment in a skill set and networking and things like that. Because I've gotten a lot of benefits out of it personally over and above what's gone into it from the actual books and the money that's made from that. But writing is hard. My wife stood at the door the other day while I was staring at my computer. She asked me, "What are you doing?" She just looked at me and stood there, and I said, "I'm writing." And she's like, "No, seriously, what are you doing? You've been just staring at your screen for the last few minutes." And I looked back at her and I said, "Yeah, I'm writing." Because that's what it's about. Like writing books is a lot of staring off into space, thinking about things, trying to find the right words. And I really encourage you to do that. I hope you come back next week um, for installment number 2, Adventures in Self-Publishing. Who are you inviting to the party to talk about the people that you might want to have kind of in your neighborhood helping you out? And then if you enjoyed this live stream, if you found something, a useful nugget in it, you can kind of get a gist for my stories and what I put out if you head out to the link I just dropped in the chat. So I really hope you enjoyed our coffee time today. I know I did. And I'll catch you next week.